Saturday morning. And if you haven't done your Christmas shopping, even if you're doing it for 4 people at the most, welcome to our club. We procrastinated podcast. Hi, I'm Steve Rabinowitz.
I'm Jay Kaplan.
I'm Anthony Strait, the king of procrastinating on this panel, by the way.
I think you and I are pretty much close, tied for first place, but we can procrastinate.
I'll take 1A. I'll take a 1A and 1B.
Welcome to our final regular, if regular is ever a word anymore, on the Sports Lines for 2022. So we're going to get to monster divisional games coming up in this show for the Jets and the Giants. We'll talk college football. We'll talk all the stuff that's going on in Qatar or Qatar or wherever you want to pronounce the Q. But the boys of summer have become the boys of December. This was actually a big week in free agent MLB, and we'll talk about it. It's why Jay has that Yankee Stadium background in there, and it's a perfect segue to this. But we'll get to the Yankees second, because the New York Mets started their Christmas shopping a little bit early. Cyber Monday, Black Friday, put all together. The free agency period, which has actually been going on for a month, the winter meetings just actually accelerated everything to warp speed, started badly. About a week ago, they lost Jacob deGrom to that powerhouse of baseball in the perennial basement for a decade, known as the Texas Rangers, for a 5-year, $185 million deal. Bargain. But Steve Cohen then went shopping. He got a 2-year, $86 million deal for a reigning AL Cy Young winner Justin Verlander there. Welcome back, 2006 Tigers. They also re-signed Brandon Nimmo to an 8-year, $162 million deal. They have David Robertson back in New York. They have Jose Quintana in there to a nice short deal to replace Taijuan Walker, who went to the Phillies. Nothing bad happens when Mets starters go to the Phillies, right, Anthony? Anyway.
No, never.
Anthony, this has been a very interesting offseason so far. Go any way you like. We're going to talk about it all. But what do you notice right now with the Mets going on in this free agency period?
What I'm noticing right now is that, one, if you're a Mets fan, you complain about the Wilpons for years. Congratulations. You have an owner who has no problem spending money, because the Mets are going to be the first team to start with a $300 million payroll on opening day next season. Just think about that. That is more than about 10 or 15 payrolls around Major League Baseball alone. And that's for an entire team. And the Mets have $300 million already on the books as far as players. Now you got the guys the Mets lost. DeGrom, I thought he was going to be cut on the way out anyway. And at the moment he decided he was going to opt out, I kind of figured that he would probably be on the move, go elsewhere. The Rangers, I think, grossly overpaid. I mean, the 5th-year option, I think it was the one that kind of caught everyone's by attention, because maybe a 3, possible 4-year deal would have been more suited for DeGrom. But you also look at the fact that the Mets had to replace Taijuan Walker. Chris Bass is also gone too, as part of that rotation, and half the bullpen is gone. You know, Drew Smith, Ottavino, Lugo, Trevor May, all free agents. So the Mets had to work cut out. I mean, Verlander, a 2-year, $86 million deal. It's literally the case of win now mentality, because that's what the Mets are at this point. And you look at it like this: he's coming off a Cy Young season, literally after just having Tommy John won his first World Series start, first World Series game in like literally his whole career, which is the Game 5 in Philadelphia. But you think about this: $43 million a season, and you only got Sergio with an already lost contract. So you got a lot of money tied up to literally the first 2 guys in your rotation. But then you also look at that Quintana gives them a quality left-handed starter, which I thought the Mets were sorely lacking last season when you looked at their rotation. They didn't have a left-handed starter, or at least a reliable one, that could at least go in, pitch quality innings and get out. And Quintana's a pitch-to-contact hitter, which may help him quite a bit in City Field, although I do worry on the warm, humid nights when the ball seems to fly out of the stadium, how that's going to translate. But they also added David Robertson. They need to kind of rebuild that bridge to Edward Diaz. And I just feel like the Mets definitely they still have work to do. I mean, what got the Mets over as far as winning those 100+ games was the fact that they did have a lot of depth in their pitching. Uh, Soldier was gone for a number of stretches. They didn't even have to go on for half the season, so they're definitely going to have to add to it. They're keeping an eye on Sagat.
Kodai Senga is who you're thinking of.
Kodai Senga, the Japanese pitcher. They still went in the play for him as well, but I just feel like the Mets still need more. I mean, we got this rotation. This is going to be a really older rotation from a year ago. With your top three starters, the top two starters are pitching 40. Cavazos also 36, and Katana's 34. That's a lot of mileage on those arms. So it's a concern with the Mets this season is going to be how do you stretch these guys out so that you can avoid the inevitable
and
injury.
Anthony, don't forget about Chris Bassett. Don't forget about
Bassett. Bassett.
I want to talk about that in just a second. Jay, hop in here. I think the Mets, one thing that they've done that I like is they've kind of moved to a Dodgers type model. It's like, we'll spend the money, but we're not going to tie you into longer contracts. Something that Cohen did with the second baseman, what they did with Lindor, that they kind of regretted. But now they're kind of in, if you're going to be in a win now mode, be literally in a win now mode.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of Mets fans, as you and I, talked about, and we noticed on social media in the aftermath, kind of like, oh, DeGrom's gone. And honestly, considering what the Rangers shelled out for him, to me, DeGrom got what he wanted, which is getting that big contract that's going to carry him through what's possibly the end of his career. But in terms of that, the Rangers are in a go for broke mode here. They needed to make a big splash in order to be able to contend in a loaded AL West that's dominated by, their fellow Texans, the Houston Astros. They needed to make that move. I was a little surprised that Chris Young, who's a former pitcher, now the first-year GM of the Rangers, actually went that far. But that the approval of that contract could have come from ownership, for all we know. In terms of the Mets not making that investment in DeGrom and then pivoting to Verlander, I am 100% on board. I think both of those moves make perfect sense, both from a baseball and from a financial standpoint. Expecting DeGrom, the Rangers are banking on DeGrom somehow managing to overcome his ridiculous injury history and be available for 30-odd starts a year for the next 5 years. He hasn't shown himself capable of staying healthy long enough to do that, since 2015. You talk about Verlander, and he's 40 years old next season. The guy's had one injury in his entire career. He had UCL surgery, and what does he do? He comes off that surgery and has a Cy Young season. He's dependable, he's available, he's out there every fifth day. His stuff really has maybe lost this much from prior to that injury, accompanied with maybe what you expect is a decline due to age. Pitchers are throwing longer. Pitchers are effective throwing longer and deeper into their careers. I'm not saying Verlander is going to be the next Nolan Ryan who's still pumping out 95-mile-an-hour fastballs when he's 45 years old. But do I think that Verlander that we saw this year can pitch to close to that level for the 2 years that the Mets are investing in him? Absolutely. I like the Quintana move, Anthony. I think that's a good way to add. I mean, it's a depth move, and it adds length to that rotation. I do think they need to get Chris Bassett back. Guys like Bassett are an underrated quantity in the major leagues. This is a guy who, he doesn't have to be, your third starter, but is he a guy that you fully capable of winning with every time he goes out there? Will he keep you in games? Will he prevent you from having to overtax your bullpen? Or will he be able to log innings if you've overtaxed your bullpen the previous day? Yeah, he perfectly fits that role. I like these moves for them. The David Robertson move, that's going to be, a lot of people, you guys caught it, but a lot of people probably didn't. That's a really solid move to bring in a veteran pitcher who has closer experience pitching in New York. That's not something that, you guys, that people should, take for granted. I I like the re-signing of Nimmo. I didn't think it would go any other way. You know, there's a nice meeting in the middle there in terms of Nimmo getting, you know, the paycheck that he wanted, the Mets being able to retain their center fielder, their leadoff hitter, the guy who is the engine that starts that Mets offense. Anthony, I agree with you. They still got, you know, more holes that need to be filled, but this is a really good start for a team that knew that despite winning 101 games, there were still improvements that needed to be made.
They need a lot. The funny thing is, the best thing about Bassett is I think he would be the youngest pitcher in that starting rotation.
That's hilarious, isn't it?
Mets have no intention.
And Robertson's no spring chicken either coming out of the bullpen.
Yeah, the Mets don't want to have to. I mean, they want to use Peterson and McGill for spot starts, but I think they would rather try to keep them in the bullpen for next year because baseball has turned into a 5 to 6 inning game and then mix and match the rest of the way. So it's going to be very interesting to see what this Mets team does. I want to talk about the offense in a second when I get to my portion of the angle, but there's another team in town and they had one huge item on their shopping list. Let's see. Re-signed AL home run king Aaron Judge. Yeah, and after a hometown visit, bachelor-style like flirtation from the Giants and the Padres, Aaron Judge signed a 9-year, $360 million contract. Judge will now be a Yankee and most certainly will probably be a Yankee captain close to his age of 40 years old. Anthony, I mentioned this to Jay. I want to mention this to you. If Judge hits a home run at 6'9", 290 pounds.
6'7", 280.
But if he hits it at 6'8", 290, or whatever he's at, he'll be the only person 38 or older to ever hit a home run 285 or larger outside of Bartolo Colon, who did it at the age of 43. It's just so hilarious. I love that. Okay. So Judge will be a Yankee close to 40. Jay, Anthony mentioned it a bunch of times. You've mentioned it on the show. We wanted them to back up the Brinks truck for Aaron Judge this entire season. And Judge made it a free agent gamble in New York sports history, probably the most expensive one. And it's the most profitable one as well for number 99.
Yeah. You know, I mean, look, we've talked about this all season, you know, from April onward. And this was a no-brainer, had to be done from both on the on-field and off-field perspectives. It was only a question of how much beyond that 7-year, $213.5 million deal that the Yankees offered and Judge declined in April. Would Hal Steinbrenner have to go? How much above that would he have to go to keep Judge in stripes for the remainder of his career? Something that Judge has never backed away from. The most epic walk year ever, guys. A slash line of 311, 425, 688, a 1.111 OPS, 211 OPS plus, that AL record 62 homers, 131 RBI, 133 runs scored, 391 total bases. He topped the American League in all of these categories except batting average and winning his first MVP award. All of that resulted in Judge getting 2 more years and $146.5 more million. The Yankees, as Anthony has said at various points, Rabbi, and as you just said now, they needed to back up the Brinks truck, and they did. This 9-year, $360 million contract will take Judge through his age 39 season. His $40 million annual average value sets a new record for position players. And look, there are a lot of people in the industry who believe that while bringing back Judge was the single biggest move the team could make to keep their championship window open in the near term. They also believe that the history of players Judge's size, and it's 6'7", 282. The guy's a tight end or a power forward. And the way position players in general decline as they get into their mid to late 30s will make they feel that it'll make the back end of this contract, gives it potential for to be pretty ugly for the Yankees. Now, I did some research here, and this kind of intrigued me because, you talk about Judge's size, and it's a big thing because people equate that to his ability to, not stay healthy really much between his rookie year and this year. So listen to this. Not many hitters 6'7" or taller have reached the majors, period. And the few that have, none have been productive past age 34. Only 2 players listed at 6'7" have even had 400 plate appearances in a season after age 30. Frank Howard, who did it 4 times, and Richie Sexson, who did it twice. Even if you take that list and include players at 6'6", only 3 more players make the 400 plate appearance club. You got Dave Winfield, who remarkably did it 10 times, including 7 full seasons with the Yankees. Dave Kingman, well known to Mets fans, who did it twice. And the Yankees' own Giancarlo Stanton, who did it in 2021. Now, Stanton struggles to stay healthy since his MVP season of 2017, when he was 27, which seemed to be the cautionary tale in the Yankees' own locker room that they ignored in making this deal. It's almost as if the team is denying the fact that time will eventually catch up with Judge, and he'll have more mediocre seasons than MVP seasons over the life of this contract. That being said, Judge has changed his eating habits, his sleeping habits, his training habits in order to keep himself as healthy and available as possible to play as much of a 162 game season as possible. Suited up a career high 157 times this year, topping the 155 games he played in his 2017 AL Rookie of the Year season. And it also gives him the chance to defy the odds that history says are against him. Look, Judge is already considered by the fan base to be the next great homegrown Yankee, picking up the face of the franchise mantle, and as Rabbi alluded to, possibly the captaincy that Derek Jeter put down when he retired. This guy, Judge, has a career arc that points to Monument Park and Cooperstown, and that's not the kind of guy you can let walk away. So even if the naysayers are correct about how things will play out, the Yankees didn't really have much of a choice. You can't let a player like Aaron Judge walk away, even with the potential risks. The Yankees didn't, and now the rest of their offseason can officially begin.
You just said, by the way, business decision. It's a business decision. It's a business decision that it almost,
well, it's more than just business.
It was, but there's almost like the ramifications of, you could talk about everything about how you've done everything for 9 years, how the back end is going to be a killer. The ramifications of that are much less than the ramifications of what would have been if Judge went out to the West Coast, Anthony.
Yeah, I think that the Yankees, this was the all season pretty much. I know they had other things they have to improve on, but we signed Aaron Judge was definitely their off season. And if you saw Met fans reacting to the Grom leave, can you imagine what New York would have been like had Judge left also?
Well, I said what would happen, Anthony. Yankees fans would tear down the house that Jeter built. Come on.
No, but I mean, this is the greatest definition of betting on yourself. I mean, we obviously the reaction when he took down the initial offer before the start of last season, and pretty much having a record-setting season and betting on himself. But the Yankees had to get this done, and you kind of felt like Aaron Judge didn't really want to leave New York. No. He's been part of the organization his whole career. I mean, obviously, he's become the face of the team, and the Yankee front office needs to be drug tested if they don't make him the captain at some point, because it's pretty obvious. But I look at it like this. I mean, when you look at the Yankees and their window of opportunity as far as winning a championship, it does start with Aaron Judge. He's kind of the foundation. And kind of, like I said, I'll call it a bridge gap between the core 4 era, where you had obviously Jeter being the last one to step away. And just ironically enough, and I throw in A-Rod too, because A-Rod's last season just happened to be the season that Aaron Judge came up, and we saw what happened in the first full season 2017. Set the AL rookie record for home runs. So him being kind of like it's symbolic that he used to stay a Yankee, and it's definitely something that they had to do. I know that. I mean, we see some crazy contrast being handed out during the winter meetings, but Aaron Judge, being a Yankee pretty much till he's 40, that's a no-brainer. You had to get that done.
Yeah. It's a no-brainer indeed. I think that Aaron wanted to be here, and there are rumors that the San Diego Padres offered 10 for $400 million, which just seems even more insane than 9 for $360, even though it's just 1 extra year and $40 extra million.
Where the Padres getting this money is beyond me.
That's a lot of people in the industry are asking that question, Anthony.
Let's hold off on that, because we're going to talk about that in just a second. But I think Aaron Judge wanted to stay here, but his agent Scott Boras was making sure there was every realistic possibility that he was going to get the most money for what he was worth, and I think he got that. Okay, very quickly, I want to talk about what the Mets and Yankees' next moves are. It's so weird actually having free agency in baseball, actually having some movement before the turn of the year, which I hate that it takes so long. But for the Mets, they're essentially running it back on offense. Not necessarily 100% sure how that's going to look like because of some of the droughts that they had last season. They're hoping that the youth that they're going to be able to bring up from the minor leagues, some of their high prospects are going to be the ones that'll kind of right the ship and make sure that they have no holes in their lineup, which they had holes in September. Let's be tremendously honest. But I think most of the stuff that they're going to do for the rest of their offseason is just focus on pitching, focus on re-signing Bassett, focus on getting the guy from Japan into the starting rotation and being allowed to keep that depth. And then again, allowing the bullpen to keep their depth so they can kind of win some of these 4-3, 3-2 type games. The Mets, I know they have unlimited sources because Steve Cohen only spent 2% of his net worth in this offseason in free agency, but they'll have some more moves to make.
I do think they need to pick up a bat, Rabbi. I mean,
I do too, but I don't think it's out there for them. I don't think it's out there for them, and I don't think it just makes sense for them. That's the problem. We'll see.
It may not be now. You're right. It may not be now, but
it's probably not going to be now. The Yankees are in a little bit of a different position, and I know that Rodon is still on the market. He is a name. Originally, when the Mets signed Verlander, I'm like, why not just go for Rodon just because he's younger and has a longer availability. But I understand now why the Mets signed him for 2 years, $86 million. I think the Yankees will try to make a play for him. There have been rumors of Correa again, who had a good season with the Twins coming over here because the Giants are not as high on him as people once thought. I think the Giants need him more than anybody else, but that's going to be an interesting move because the Yankees have needed a little more depth in that lineup. So I think they're the ones that are more likely to go after one more bat than the Mets are now.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
But I'm very interested to see what happens, especially because everybody and their mother always accuses the Yankees now of being cheap. What world are we living in? So I want to see that and see what money, but I want to see them spend that money responsibly, which I don't think any baseball fan has any realistic.
Yeah, and what kind of world we living in when the Mets are being called the new Yankees, and the Yankees are being accused of being cheap?
No one's as cheap.
You know what? That's the problem. You know, that's hyperbole because Hal hasn't really channeled his late father's profligate spending habits. But you know what? You nailed it correctly. The Yankees are not afraid to spend. Judge this year. Cole before that, they just make other moves responsibly. And I'll tell you what, people can knock Cashman all they want. The man has done a good job working within the parameters that are defined by his owner, like every GM in this sport.
Yeah, absolutely. Cashman doesn't run the payroll.
Exactly. And that's something that people need to get used to and understand. Cashman's done a good job, and re-signing him was the right move by the Yankees. He's done a good job.
All right, guys, let's move on. The winter meetings, the first winter meetings in 3 years were this week. So guys, you know what that means. Yep, it's money for everybody. You get money. You get money. You all get money.
You get a $300 million contract. You get a $300 million contract.
So this was a very local heavy market, but there were other things that happened too in this free agency market. We're going to look at three of those moves now. Anthony, one move that didn't involve the locals that stands out to you.
You know what? First off, what was the point of that lockout last season when the owners are still willingly giving out money? The playoffs are the biggest winners in this winter meetings. I mean, hey, look, can I be a baseball player and get $100 million for a couple of years too? I mean, I bet maybe 200, maybe on a good day. No, but Wilson Contreras going from the Cubs to the rival Cardinals is kind of a bit of an eye opener. Look, the Cardinals, when you have a guy like Yadier Molina who has been such a rock for your team for almost 2 decades, kind of hard to replace a guy who's pretty much going into Cooperstown at some point. And between him and Adam Wainwright, probably one of the best 1-2 batter combinations you can have, as far as being a foundation of your franchise. Well, bringing over one of the Contreras brothers, Wilson, anyway, that's a good start. And Contreras is one of the better offensive hitting catchers, obviously, in baseball. Come off a season where he batted 243, 22 home runs, and 55 RBIs, and 101 hits, and just over 400 at bats. Now, in the last 2 years, he's been ranked among third among catchers as far as his batting splits. Just behind. Oh wow, this was my Alejandro Kirk and Will Smith. As far as the catchers, the question mark is going to be his defense, and there was some complaints that the Astros wasn't too high on him last season before the trade deadline. There've been issues with him framing pitches, maybe not being on the same page as pitches. The Cardinals obviously is willing to overlook that and realize that he's actually bringing some offense to a team that pretty much has some pretty good offensive depth. When you think about, they still got Paul Goldschmidt in the lineup. On top of that, then you got they're hoping for Tyler O'Neill to have a bounce back year. Jordan Walker, one of their prospects, coming up in the minors, maybe joins the team at some point. So I think that's where Contreras is going to be the biggest help from this team. Where you get even with Lionel Molina being one of the best defensive catchers of all time, he struggled offensively, obviously later in his career. And Cardinals catchers only batted just above 200 the last 2 seasons. So that's a huge upgrade for the Cardinals. And we saw how they were able to turn it on the last couple of years and get to the playoffs. Now with a little more offense, let's see what they can do once they reach the home stretch. And NL Central, let's be honest, it's pretty winnable. I mean, it's a wide open division. Like anybody can win that division on any given year. But the Cardinals obviously is the best position to kind of repeat as division champs.
Any given team, but the Cardinals just win it every single year just because they have the best franchise out there. Let's see what happens. They definitely look like a team that can do more than just compete for the NL Central and a very loaded NL. Jay, who are you looking at? I know you're looking at a certain move in Philly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at shortstop Trea Turner, who agreed to an 11-year, $300 million contract with the Phillies. The NL East team that was least expected to win the senior circuit pennant continues to surprise, and getting Turner to change coasts, which, was their biggest get in an offseason that's so far been full of good gets. Of the big name free agent shortstop available, to me, Turner is the most complete package. He fills 2 of the toughest roles to fill on any team, shortstop and leadoff hitter. Over his last 2 full seasons, he's averaged a 312, 358, 500 slash line with an 858 OPS, a 352 batting average on balls in play, 24 homers, 88 RBIs, 104 runs scored, 194 hits, and 30 steals. And he has a wins above replacement of 6 the last 2 years per Fangraphs. He's a solid to above average defender at shortstop, and he should be able to stay there for at least the first half of the contract's length before the Phillies have to think about moving him to either second base or center field, 2 positions he's played 45 and 91, 45 games in center, 91 games at second. He's played them at a decent level at the major league level. The city of brotherly love is the perfect place for Turner. He doesn't like the spotlight, so reuniting with former national teammate Bryce Harper means A, he doesn't have to be the face of the franchise, and 2, he's not the only $300 million man on the roster. He also, like Harper, wanted to find a place he could put down roots. Turner's wife is from Jersey, so that may have had something to do with it. He was hoping to do that in D.C. He never really wanted to leave, but the Nationals kind of upset him with how they handled extension talks before sending him to the Dodgers at the 2021 trade deadline. So the fact that Turner accepted a contract with only a $27 million annual average value, but gives him the security of an 11-year deal, which takes him through his age 40 season, along with a full no trade clause and no opt-outs, is not surprising for a guy who wanted to be in one place for the rest of his career. Phillies needed a shortstop, and Trea Turner was the top one on the market, and he was the one the team wanted, even if signing him meant surrendering 2 draft picks, a second and a fifth, and $1 million in international bonus pool money, because he received a qualifying offer from the Dodgers. I've been a fan of Turner's ever since he came up with the Nats. He's a pure 5-tool player who plays the game the right way. Not going to like watching him, inflict damage upon the Mets. Anthony will agree with me on that, but I'm going to enjoy watching this guy play. And I'll tell you what, the Phillies will not surprise anybody. The AL East is going to be a true 3-team race from jump next year. And the Phillies getting Turner will be one of the biggest reasons why.
Yeah, I just Jay, can you imagine being a pitcher and the top of the lineup, you have to deal with Turner and Schwarber. And then you have to deal with, Bryce Harper batting in a 3-hole. So
yeah, and
good
this
luck
is the interesting thing. They had Schwarber batting leadoff, kind of like the Yankees had Judge batting leadoff because they wanted Schwarber's home run power at the top of the lineup. Now they don't have to do that. Turner's going to bat leadoff, and think about Turner being on base and the changes to the rules that will allow a guy like him who's already a tier 1 base stealer to cause even more havoc on the base pass. If you don't think Schwarber batting in the 2-hole is going to see more fastballs that he can crush into the upper deck, out at Citizens, I mean, come on. This lineup, which was crazy enough with home runs last year. Oh man, yeah, Anthony, I don't want to be a pitcher in the National League, let alone the National League East, having to deal with the length that this lineup just got.
However, one thing that you just mentioned is if you put Schwarber at number 2, you kind of take away the possibility of, because Schwarber is kind of a home run or bust guy, which is one of the reasons
That's true.
why he was
honestly,
at number 1.
Yeah,
honestly, putting Strait,
they could do it the other way. They could.
That's why the other way sounds a little more reasonable to have kind of like a
because
spot.
then you slot Turner, whose ability to get on base, and you have Harper in the 3-hole, giving him more opportunities.
That's a lot more likely.
So either way, and
either way, it works out really well.
Thing about it, they have more options. Like that offense needed more options.
Yeah, and Turner's speed fits in Bay Park with all the nooks and crannies in that outfield. And along with Schwarber's power, because that is the smallest stadium I've ever sat in, and I can think of experience. That is a bad box if there ever is one. And Yankee Stadium is the Grand Canyon compared to that place.
Well, not on the bright side. Okay. So Jay was mentioning the worry of having 2 $300 million hitters in your lineup. I bring you the San Diego Padres, who currently are now with 4 people who are making over $275 million, because going along with Juan Soto, Manny Machado, and Fernando Tatis Jr. is now former Boston Red Sox shortstop Xander Bogaerts, who at the last moment ended up signing a big deal of 11 years and $280 million. Now, there's a lot of angles to this. So let's start it on number 1. Jay mentioned earlier Aaron Judge leaving New York and them tearing the house that Ruth built down, or the house that Jeter built down. The problem is the Red Sox have kind of done that with almost their entire team. The only person left of their homegrown people is Rafael Devers, and he's available to be a free agent next year. The Red Sox have tried to keep all of these players, but unfortunately, they've just been outspent, which is very rare for a team who is from like the number 4 market in the world, in the United States, getting outspent by the number 27 market in the United States. Xander Bogaerts was basically the Padres' answer to, we got to do something, after they lost out on Trey Turner, despite offering him more money than the Phillies did, and losing out on Aaron Judge, despite offering a little more money than the Yankees did. Xander was the next option, and when I looked at the headline, I'm looking, he's got to go to the Padres because the Padres have to do something, and there it was. He became a Padre. Xander is likely, as of right now, the plan is he will play shortstop. By the way, 307, 377, 456, split last year, 15 home runs and 73 RBIs. The power's not there, but you can get one of the only like 20 guys in the major leagues right now that hits over 300. You do it. Well, so the whole plan is, as of right now, is that he will play shortstop next year.
Yeah.
They'll move over Ha-Sung Kim, and then they're going to put Jake, they'll move him at second. Jake Cronenworth will go to first. Fernando Tatis, as long as he's not doping anymore, will go to right field, and Soto will go to left field. They were almost like shoot first, ask questions later. And that's what the Padres motto has been even though they are the 27th market again in baseball. And I'm not saying, I know we want small markets to be as powerful as the big markets. This is a team that over the past week has offered $1 billion of contract money to players, getting obviously the one, but they have offered $1 billion of contract money. I don't know where the Padres get it. I don't know why the Padres get it. I don't know if the Padres can win this way. They did get to the NLCS last year, but they did finish 20 games under the division champion Dodgers. The Dodgers were a better team until it came to the 5-game series that they played in October. So whatever the Padres are doing, mazel tov. And hopefully for them, I mean, we make fun of them all the time now and just their needless spending of money. And eventually it's going to have to work out, or this is just going to become one big disaster. All of this can't just get you one win in the NLCS. It has to eventually lead to a trophy.
I think the moves are just basically I think the moves are for October. We saw what the Padres could do when they got into the month of October.
They barely made October last year, though, Anthony. They were games away from missing it.
Hey, look, it just matter once you get to the ball, the dance is there. Yeah, hey, long as it's like midnight, you're in there. Look, from personal experience, because they beat the Mets in the wild card round. Teams like guys like Josh Bell and they were struggling. There were trade acquisitions that were struggling, and then it just got hot at the right time. And you think I think the Padres, for what it's worth, these moves are hoping to strike lightning in the bottle again. But this time, get them forward past the NLCS. I mean, look, they took out the two biggest markets in baseball, New York and Los Angeles, respectively, in back-to-back rounds. So, I mean, I just want to know where the hell are they getting this money? Because Petco cannot possibly be paying out this much for the naming rights to that stadium. No way.
Yeah, no, that's going to be very interesting to see. But I always do think of the Padres as a discount store Dodgers team, but both have had about the same amount of success, unless you count the strike shortened season of 2020. All right.
Enough.
NFL time. Moving on to some holiday season NFL actions. And for the Giants, bring everybody to the table, sit all the people down, and go kiss your sister. Because they tied last week in a tie 2020 to the Washington Commanders. Anyway, the Giants are still winless in NFC East matchups. They're 0-2-1, but they still have 3 games to go. And game 1 is tomorrow against the 11-1 and consensus best team in the NFL right now. They lead it by a game over the Minnesota Vikings, and everybody else in the AFC has 3 losses. So there's pretty much no better you can get right now than the Philadelphia Eagles. All right, we're going to talk about what we've usually been talking about this year. Jay, negative or positive? I thought there were a lot of positives late. You weren't too happy about a lot of the play calling during the game. What do you take from the Giants-Commanders game?
I mean, the top line stuff for me is, the head scratching play calling and, game management and, the fact that Saquon's struggles are continuing. I mean, you kind of alluded to it in your opener, Rabbi. I mean, was there a more frustrating game this season than last week's tie with Washington? The kissing your sister George Brett quote kind of puts it right there. This was a winnable game for the Giants, and it was one they had to win. And yet, even though they didn't lose, it kind of feels like they did due to the chances they had that they didn't convert on for a variety of reasons. I mean, head coach Brian Daboll, who's all about being aggressive early in the season, seems to have adopted a more conservative approach as the season has worn on. Maybe that's due to a playoff spot being on the line. Maybe it's due to opponents figuring out what got the Giants to that 6-1 start, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and taking it away of late in this current 1-3-1 stretch. Maybe it's something else, but it did seem that Daboll was playing more not to lose against Washington as opposed to going for the win. I mean, first example, end of the first half, they ran Jones on a zone read play, 3rd and 1, Washington 11, 19 ticks left. Instead of, throwing the ball either into the end zone, trying to get a score, or towards the sideline. Jones only got 2 yards. Granted, it got the first down, but they then had to rush up and spike the ball, which left them 5 seconds. All they could do was trot Graham Gano out for a 27-yard chip shot field goal. Run the ball on 3rd down in that scenario seemed, not just to me, but to others, like a call made more out of fear of a potential mistake over the ward of a possible touchdown. And I hate to, throw this out there, but that reminded me a lot more of Joe Judge's style of game management than what we saw earlier in the season from Dable. Then again, considering the Giants didn't have a true first down on their last 4 possessions of regulation, maybe Dable was correct to take the automatic points with Gano. The one time the Giants did pick up a first down was on that 12-yard completion to Darius Slayton to start that drive with 6:22 left in the game. But then, the Giants wind up netting out only 9 yards because inexplicably, center John Feliciano runs up to where the play ended and starts flexing around 4 commanders and get hit with a 15-yard taunting penalty. And you know what? Feliciano can talk all he wants about how he's just celebrating with his teammate, but I'm sorry, an offensive lineman has zero business being that far down the field on a pass play that isn't a screen. Okay? The way regulation ended had me scratching my head as well in a what were they thinking with these play calls kind of way. The Giants tried to, put it in the air and deep 3 straight plays. Jones and Slayton failed to connect on first down. That would have put them inside the Washington's 40-yard line. Slayton was wide open, got turned around, failed to adjust the ball, but it was catchable, and he needed to hang on to that. And yet, once again, 2 more incompletions later, and they're punting. I can understand taking the deep shot on first down, but you had 1:39 left after that, all 3 timeouts. Why go back to the deep pass 2 more times? I get it. The book is clearly out on the Giants offense. Defenses are sitting on the roots that were producing easy completions on the play action rollouts that Jones was using earlier. And teams have also been scheming to deter him from keeping the ball on zone reads. He went from averaging a little over 8 carries and 49 yards per game in the first 7 games to a little over 5 yards and 27 yards per game in the past 4 on those type of plays. But getting completely away from who you are, which is what they did on that last possession, to me is not the way to go. I'm not sure where the creativity I saw earlier in the season with this offense is gone, but Dable and offensive coordinator Mike Kafka need to put their heads together and come up with a better scheme than what we saw last week, or the Eagles are going to crush them. Granted, Saquon's continued struggles make that more of a challenge. 18 carries, only 63 yards, it's 3.5 a pop. 5 catches for just 18 yards. It's barely over 3. 6 of Barkley's 18 carries are stopped for no gain or negative yardage, which, granted, that directly correlates to issues on the offensive line, and they had run blocking issues, no doubt. However, and Barkley ranks 31st in the league with 19% of his carries producing 0 or negative yards this season. But then again, that's been a constant throughout his career, 23.4% in 18, 21.2% in 19, and 21% last season. However, and this is the thing that's frustrating for me, he's averaging 2.8 yards after contact, 33rd in the league, 34.6 carries per broken tackle, 38th in the league. Those are some pretty bad numbers that are not dependent on the offensive line. And not even increasing the number of times they ran heavy personnel, 2 or 3 tight end sets. That didn't even seem to help. Not sure where they go next to try and get Barkley on track, but if you can't return even close to his first half form, the Giants are going to have to rely more on their quarterback. And Jones did everything he could, and overall it was a positive game for him, 25 of 31. It's a little over almost 81%. Yeah, he was 14 of 15 in the first half. That spike to stop the clock was his only incompletion. Had 200 yards, touchdown, no interception, 104.3 passer rating. 12 carries, 71 yards. It's almost 6 a carry on the ground. Once again, leading the team in rushing. On the negative, yeah, he was sacked 4 times and he did lose a fumble. But now he's 4-1-1 in his career versus Washington. His 10 career TD passes against the Commanders is 4 more than his next highest total against anyone. He made some big plays. Notably, he had a 21-yard scramble that set up the Giants' first field goal, and that 55-yard dime to Slayton on the next possession that set up the touchdown that tied the score at 10 halfway through the second quarter. Now, look, while Jones may be better as a complementary player as opposed to being the focus of the offense, if Saquon struggles continues, and the Giants may have no choice but to make their quarterback the focus, and Dable and Kafka have to come up with a scheme that puts Jones in the best position to make plays and keep the Giants' offensive productive. We'll see what Sunday brings, guys.
Let me actually add to that, because I want to go back to the Cowboy game for just a quick second, because I think that was Jones's worst game of the season. I think there were a lot of passes that he missed, and obviously the 4th down where he just missed through to Barkley was probably a key. And I think that I don't know if past performance leads to future plays when it comes to quarterback, because Daniel Jones is not a rookie quarterback. They know he can come over these plays. But I do wonder how much they were like, okay, we need to dial this back a little bit. And what you said about Saquon, has been Saquon his whole career, it seems like, until you see the 20-yard burst. You're like, oh, that's what he does all of this.
Right.
And when he doesn't do that, which he's done a lot of games in his career, you don't really notice all of that stuff. He needs to become more of a weapon. And although I do believe that when he gets that offensive line needs to improve, especially when he gets those screen passes, because that's when he can be the most.
Yeah,
Rabbi, though, they still have a lot of holes and a lot of mismatch. They have a lot of mismatchups right now. They're outclassed a lot of the time.
They are, without a fact. And look, we know that in terms of, what Jones did against Dallas, how that translates into what they did or did not allow him to do against Washington. There's not a lot of that because the scheme that you create each week is based on who your matchup is a lot more than, if your quarterback had a bad game the previous game. The thing with me is the question for me was, will we see that what happened against Dallas first time, how that'll impact what they do against Dallas the second time?
True, but there are still a lot of NFC East teams that run the same scheme. Let's be fair.
Without a doubt. But the question for me is if you feel like what was successful for you earlier in the season is now being taken away, if you're not able to adjust and pivot to something else that will, improve things. I mean, the creativity and the second half adjustments we saw earlier in the season don't seem to be happening. If everyone has now figured out what you do and what you do well, if you don't have an adjustment for that on your side, that's a problem because that's what you get paid to do as a head coach, as an offensive coordinator. And yes, I will grant you, Rabbi, personnel-wise, the Giants are probably outmatched on paper in every game. But there's a reason they were able to do what they did in the first half of the season. And you know what? You have to find wrinkles. The NFL is a constant of adjustments, and you can't just, kind of pull the whole tortoise thing when, oh my God, what I used to do doesn't work anymore. You can't do this. You got two very creative offensive guys. We need to see that creativity ramp back up. They need to start thinking out of the box. Even
we're gonna see what happens.
We are
this weekend because you're going to need the creativity because this is very likely to be a shootout. Speaking of Anthony, defense had some moments, but especially at the 2-minute warning of the game against Washington, we saw the really obvious weakness, and that's what you want to focus on.
Yeah, I mean, well, the positive is when you see the Giants have something, the combination of Ojolari and Thibodeau when healthy, being the edge rushers, because
save the game. Probably the MVPs of that game.
But how on earth did Heineken hold on to the football when Thibodeau nailed him in overtime? It's probably going to be one of the greatest mysteries this season because he was absolutely blasted from behind because Thibodeau was unblocked the whole play. But you look at it like this, and also Leonard Williams left the game too, and this is not the first time he's left the game this season, and his health has become a bit of an issue because he is such a linchpin for stopping a run. And this gets to my next point. The Giants have really struggled as far as stopping a run the last couple of weeks. The Cowboys were able to gash them in both meetings. Last week they gave up 165 yards on the ground. And when the Giants, because they're such a very aggressive blitz happy defense, you do wonder sometimes they over pursue, they overcommit to the blitz too much, and they give up a little bit in the run lane. But a lot of these rushing plays are coming from really just missed tackles also. And we've seen a number of missed tackles in the last few weeks. Fabian Monroe missed a tackle that allowed Terry McLaughlin to get into the end zone in the first quarter. Zion Gilbert, the practice squad player, I mean, the moment he was on the field, the Commandos offense just targeted him right away. They went after him. And he was the cover guy. He fell down and missed a tackle Jahan Dotson on that game-tying 28-yard touchdown that tied the game and eventually sent it overtime. But the Giants has had opportunities to get off the field in the last few weeks, and not been able to get it done. Obviously, the 4th and 12 that would have pretty much put the game away. They gave up a big completion downfield on a pretty much it was a scramble play. And think about the Dallas game on Thanksgiving when they had opportunities to hold Dallas a field goal. They blitzed and left the depleted secondary kind of on an island, and Dallas was able to take advantage of that. The tackling, the missed tackles, has been kind of the problem that caught my attention because early in the season the Giants was so good as far as being able to show up tackling and game tackling, keep yards after the catch very limited, and obviously during this stretch they have really the tacklers got sloppy. They've given up big plays because of it, and that's something that they really are going to have to clean up because you talk about Philadelphia Eagles offense that there's some weeks you watch like they can just name a score, a final score because the offense has been that good this season, and then you got Jalen Hurts being an X factor, being able to get out of the pocket. They have got to do a better job of wrapping guys up and bringing and tackling them because they give up. They start doing that tomorrow against Philadelphia. It's gonna be really hard for this defense to slow down a really good offense, let alone get off the field, which the Giants have been doing a good job of most of the season, and lately they haven't been able to do it. So it's been kind of a catch-22 as well. I mean, with Ojulari and Thibodeau back healthy, they don't have to blitz as much. They were able to get to Heineken 4 sacks after not getting a sack on Thanksgiving Day. So that should definitely help as far as being able to drop guys back more and cover up some of the holes in that secondary with guys being out of the lineup.
Yeah.
So I really think the Giants may see them blitz sending less guys to kind of help out that secondary a little bit.
Yeah, but the problem is, regardless of who's in that secondary, you still have to deal with AJ Brown. And I'm just going to mention a couple of things. I'll even mention this with a quick question that was asked to Wink Martindale earlier this week, basically asking how will the Giants handle AJ Brown on Sunday, Eagles wide receiver. Wink Martindale says, you got any ideas? It's like they've got T.O. playing back there again. He's a problem. When we went against him when he was in Tennessee, he's a big physical receiver that you'd have to fight in every play. He was a defensive player. He'd be an outside linebacker. That's how physical he plays at wide receiver. And just remember, you have Devontae Smith, a former Heisman Trophy winner, on the other side of the field. So AJ Brown, the guy who is so good, he basically got a GM of a 7-5 team fired 4 days after a performance when he played the Titans on Sunday. He went for 8 catches for 119 yards and 2 touchdowns. Titans pass catchers, by the way, 157 receiving yards combined. He is just a beast. Playing with Jalen Hurts this year, Brown has been able to basically unlock stuff as a true number 1 wide receiver of let's face it, a Super Bowl favorite team. He's almost already at 1,000 yards this season. The one guy who could have been a good quarter against him is former teammate Adoree Jackson. He's injured. So this is a tough matchup. And if you've ever heard, you're going to have to go one of 2 ways on Sunday with AJ Brown. You're going to have to double him. There's almost no doubt about it. And you're going to have to take your chances. And I disagree, Anthony. You're going to have to basically do what they did against Jalen Hurts last year. And this was so much different of a team last year. And that's blitz the shit out of him and hope he has a game that reverts back to the second-year player that we saw play last year in Giants Stadium in what was like a 10-7 ugly game. But that Jalen Hurts is very much gone, and what has appeared is an NFL MVP favorite like Jalen Hurts. Just the weapons that he has, the team that he has, the offense that Nick Sirianni runs. This is a tough one. I know the Eagles at times have had issues this year. Playing against the run is a big one, as noticed in their 1 loss to Washington, but there is a lot of work to do in tomorrow's game. The Giants, 7-point underdogs at home for a reason. The Eagles are really, really good. I know that's not that's an easiest thing to say, but they're really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's move on to the Jets. While Mike effing White and the New York effing Jets gave Minnesota all they could effing handle last Sunday, the fact remains the same that one more L gets added to the loss column for the now 7-5 Jets. And then not any easier. It'll get easier after this week, Jets fans, but the fun continues for Gangrene as they got to go to Orchard Park and face the AFC East leading Buffalo Bills. They're looking for a little justice. And Anthony, you know what happens when tables of justice come into mind. Bring out the Dudley boys and Buffalo Bills as they are going to look to see if they can recover from the 2017 loss suffered at MetLife a little more over a month ago, or as Jet fans hope to put it, Zach Wilson's last win as a New York Jet. All right, Shay, lots of positives to take out of this game for the New York Jets. If Zach Wilson had any emotion at all, he'd be concerned at Mike White's performance on Sunday. What's your main take from this game? Could be a negative also, but I feel like there were more positives.
Yeah, hey, and just remember, nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
Yes, Chris.
Yeah.
You know, and the things that I did take away, and you're right, Rabbi, I'm going to focus a lot. There was plenty of positives to take away from that game, despite how, it ended. And the big thing for me was improved quarterback play and the return of the running game. You know, I spoke on our last show about how the Jets needing just tier 3 level quarterback play with the running game and defense that they have in order to be successful. And while they were unable to finish off the comeback against the Vikings, I saw signs of improved play from the quarterback position that will hopefully bode well for tomorrow's matchup against the Bills. Granted, with as bad as Zach Wilson played before being benched, the bar was set pretty low, but there was a definitive uptick in both play from the position with Mike White and the effect he's having on the team as a whole, and that shouldn't be underestimated. I went back and looked at Mike White's throws, and while having him put the ball in the air 58 times is not ideal, when you're down 20-6 at halftime, throwing the ball is the quickest way to get back into a game. White was 31 of 58 overall for 369 yards, 0 scores in those 2 picks. He was 17 for 31 for 249 yards. That's 8 per pass in the second half as the Jets were ramping up, trying to come back. His passer rating for the game was 59.8, and that's mostly because of the 2 touchdowns, the 2 interceptions rather. That said, I only saw about a half a dozen throws that I will call bad ones. The first INT is not on White, as that one bounced out of Corey Davis's hands. The one in the end zone that ended the comeback is on him as he tried to force a pass into a window that was way too tight in too small an area of the field. There were a couple of other throws that should have been INTs that the Vikes dropped, and 3 to 4 other passes that left me scratching my head. And what were you thinking? What did you see or not see on that one in that kind of a way? But for the most part, White made good decisions with the football and took what the defense gave him. Were there plenty of throws that looked like checkdowns and dump-offs? Yes, and some of that could have been what LaFleur ordered as opposed to him just going that way. But he got rid of the ball quickly, got it into the hands of his playmakers, and gave them a chance to make positive plays. And that's really all the Jets need from White, to make good decisions and make positive plays to keep drives going. White himself understands that he does not need to play hero ball for this team to win. He recognized that his previous matchup against the Bills got away from him because he thought he needed to get the Jets back into the game with every throw, and he knows now that that's not how the game is supposed to be played. His growing chemistry with Garrett Wilson is a huge positive and something to build on. Rookie wide receiver wasn't targeted for the first time until the second quarter, and then White just couldn't stop throwing him the ball. Their first hookup went for 15 yards, and after that it was 10, 18, 23, 13, 5, 16, 18 before it was all said and done. That 60-yarder, Wilson nearly scored on that one. Toes grazed the sidelines before he could cut back across the field and get into the end zone. But, still terrific play. White also nearly connected with Wilson on a deep ball in the fourth quarter. The rookie had the cornerback burned, but White just overthrew him. Had they connected, the Jets might have left Minnesota with the W. Wilson finished with 8 catches on 15 targets for 162 yards. That's the most for a Jets receiver in a game since Eric Decker had 221 at the end of 2014. Add to this the emergence of Zonovan Bam Knight as the number 1 running back, and the Jets have the makings of a potential playoff team. Wow, did I really just say that? The rookie running back ran for 90 yards on 15 carries at 6 yards a pop, added 5 catches for 28. His 48-yard fourth quarter run helped set up the Jets' only red zone touchdown, that 1-yard run by Mike White. Knight's ascendance to the lead running back role is no fluke. The film doesn't lie. He's shown more burst hitting holes than Michael Carter or James Robinson, and his ability to pick up extra yards when defenders are trying to tackle him has been impressive. Per Football Focus, he's averaging 3.72 yards after contact per carry the last 2 weeks. That's number 6 among running backs with at least 10 carries. He's also forced 10 missed tackles. That's tied for second most behind Josh Jacobs of the Raiders. Knight is also the first undrafted rookie since Philip Lindsay in 2018 to have back-to-back games with at least 100 total yards from scrimmage. When the Jets beat the Bills in week 9, or as Rabbi said, Zach Wilson's last win, they ran the ball 34 times for 174 yards. That's over 5 yards a carry and a touchdown. They're going to need a similar performance on Sunday, and that means Bam, once again, needs to go Bam. All that good stuff that I just said being, putting all that aside, though, the bottom line here, guys, the Jets could not finish drives. And that ultimately is what cost them the game against Minnesota. 6 times they reached the red zone. Only once did they come away with a touchdown. White himself was 6 of 17 for just 24 yards in that game-ending pick in the red zone. Jets couldn't convert on 3 plays from the 1-yard line in another fourth quarter drive. Whether it's the plays being called by offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur or the execution of those plays, something somewhere needs to change so the Jets can come away with 7s more often than they come away with 3s in the red zone. Sunday against the Bills would be a good time for that change to start happening, fellas.
Yeah, and that's a team that hasn't finished a lot this season, especially in their AFC East games. Just look back at both Patriot games as a huge example, especially that first one. That second one, they never really even got into the red zone for even a question. And it's funny when you were mentioning, oh my God, the Jets are a playoff team. You don't realize, first of all, you don't realize how much talent they have until you look at it again. I'm like, oh, there's a stud here. There's a defensive stud here. It's also because they've had about 10 years of top 10 draft picks. So eventually some of them have
you got to figure some of them will play out.
And they've all hit pretty well.
As the draft is, yes.
They've all hit pretty well. Also, I don't know how they continue to just manufacture running backs like they're on a conveyor line this year, but it's ridiculous. That's the way you can win in the NFL. Just gain it 3 yards at a cloud of smoke at a time. All right, Anthony, 27 doesn't seem like the most important amount of points to ever give up and to be happy about, although Russell Wilson would die for even 20. Hashtag Broncos Nation, let's ride. But the Jets defense did feel a little bit decent.
Uneven?
Against one of the best offenses in the NFL, but second half much improved, and that's your big takeaway for the Jets team.
Yeah, definitely. The second half was a much better improvement on the first half. The first half, obviously, they fell behind 20-3. The defense tightened up in the second half, particularly the back end, the secondary, between Gardner and Reed, the corner combination. Although Reed was beaten by Justin Jefferson on a touchdown in that game. They did a good job with him. 7 catches, 45 yards. They did give up the 1 touchdown. Kirk Cousins had a pedestrian game, obviously. 21-35, 173. The defense was able to, the secondary did a great job in the second half. The defense was able to get pressure on Cousins also in that second half. It was Quentin Williams and Carl Lawson, obviously, still had in that charge. But one of the things, too, that the Jets have, something that's dried out the last couple of weeks, they're not forcing turnovers. You have to go back to a garbage interception in that game against Chicago. That's the last time they were able to force a turnover from the opposing team, and that's something that they really gonna have to force Josh Allen to make a couple of mistakes. If you want to beat Buffalo a second time, they were able to do that the first game, which was tough for me to watch since I was in a totally different time zone at that time. But that's one of the things that they really have to do, and that was one a hallmark to why this defense tournament this season has been such a total 180 from a year ago. It's that ability to take the ball away. They got another matchup. The secondary, Reed and Gardner, they got another tough lineup matchup this week. Going from Justin Jefferson to now you have Stephon Diggs, who was putting up an amazing season in his own right. And Buffalo, and this is despite the fact that defenses know Josh Allen is throwing the ball to him, and then still have been able to slow him down. So, and also another thing that was mentioned, I was watching the post game on SNY, and they alluded to was the officiating, because we're seeing Reed and Gardner are very physical, aggressive defensive backs. And depending on what officiating crew they get, they may not be able to get away with as much tugging and pulling as they generally would do in games past. Last week, they would call for a couple of penalties. The Jets defense called for 6 overall. So they're gonna have to be aggressive, physical, but you gotta be a little careful too. Depending on what officiating crew gets the game tomorrow. And with Stephon Diggs, he's a physical guy himself, so that's really interesting. A very interesting matchup to watch as far as can they slow him down as well. The secondary has done a great job this year taking away the other team's best receivers and not let them have big games. So that's going to be one thing that the Jets are going to have to do as well. But the turnovers, definitely, they have to force Josh Allen to make a couple of mistakes if they want to win. If they want to win for a second time against Buffalo, and I don't know if you guys seen the weather report. I mean, it's been kind of back and forth between snow, rain, but I can't. It's Buffalo. It's Ocean Park, New York. Is something I never want to look at a weather report when it comes to that area because it's pretty unpredictable. Like it could be bright and sunny in 1 minute, but cold and wind chill in the negative numbers, and then we have snow the next day. So I kind of want to see what this forecast is gonna look like tomorrow when I wake up.
I'm very curious to see. Remember, this is about the same time last year as we had the 3-pass game with the ridiculous wind conditions for that Bills Patriots game. So if Mike White is in that situation, Zachary Knight, get ready for a long day. Tre'Davious White is the Bills' best quarter, and I kind of want to bring this back because I think we're obviously going to marvel over the Sauce Gardner versus Stephon Diggs matchup, but that's going to be a very key matchup. But I want to look at the other side of the ball because, by the way, Jay, to add to that stat, I know you were talking about the Vikings game in the red zone. They were also 2 of 7 against the Bears in the red zone in the week before, so their numbers are not good.
No,
Mike White cannot finish in the red zone, which is a big problem. But back to what you're going to see Sunday, you're going to see a banged up secondary. The Bills do have some holes. They do, like I said, Tre'Davious White has only played the last 3 games, although he looked pretty good in the Patriots game. It's not the greatest offense in the world, but it is something to kind of take a model off of. Matt Milano is another good cornerback, might not be playing in this game. Jordan Poyer didn't play in the first game, will be playing in the second game, but I think White is going to be the key matchup. He'll probably be on Garrett Wilson most of the time. Wilson has actually had the most yards from scrimmage in the last 2 weeks in the NFL season. So he's going to be a big part of it, is really now putting his name in the offensive rookie of the year race, which is going to be a very interesting one. Jets have possibly the offensive and defensive rookie of the year. I want to see what Mike White does when everybody is not covered, when he is in a position where it's going to be a shootout type game, when the game is 20-20, not necessarily when the game is 20-6, because we know teams get a little lax at that time. And also, I think the Minnesota Vikings just live for under 7-point games, no matter what the situation is this season. So this could get ugly early. Then Mike White will have to do it. But I want to see what happens when it's White against Wilson one-on-one, because I know the Bills are going to have a lot of different defensive combinations. Von Miller is out for the year, so their pass rush is definitely taking a huge hit. You saw that part of the defense kind of got itself together a little bit when Miller was healthy. You saw in the Lions game a few weeks ago, not the Patriots game, that team can easily be gashed if possibly needed. So White is, like I said, going to be a huge part of this game because the secondary of the Bills versus the quarterback play of the Jets is going to determine if this is a game that comes down to the final seconds and Mike White has to make one more play, or if this game is over by halftime and that 12 inches of snow that Anthony thinks is going to fall down at Orchard Park, and, everybody can get home early or just play at the Stillmore. Nobody leaves Buffalo early. So I'm very curious to see. This game can go a lot of different ways for me. I think I know which way it's going to go. But as predicted with the New York Jets season this year, you have no idea which way it's going to go until you actually see it.
Yep.
All right. Moving on. Finally, close out our football. After a crazy final college football month in which we saw Ohio State fans beg at the altar of Urban Meyer again after just one loss. Jay, you would have loved Twitter the day in real time after. You would have loved it. You would have just been laughing hysterically.
That's every day after the game, depending
it's so
on
good though. It was so good though. But we can always talk about that another time. We also learned that the most important college football team in South Carolina is actually South Carolina this year. Who knew? We also learned that Utah, whether losing the Pac-12 title in 2019 or winning the Pac-12 title and preventing a team from actually going to the CFP in 2021 and 22, the Utes are actually the Pac-12's greatest threat to getting back to the CFP. But after all of that, we have a Final Four. Chick-fil-A Bowl is number 1 Georgia. Boy, was I freaking wrong about them. Mea culpa, maxima culpa. And number 4 Ohio State. Boy, were we really all wrong about them after that Michigan game. Mea culpa, maximum culpa. And then we have a Fiesta Bowl of number 2 Michigan. Michigan back to the CFP for the second time in 2 years. Go Blue. And TCU. First time we've had two that's the number 3 seed, TCU. First time we've had 2 non-conference champs in the CFP. First time we've had no Alabama or Clemson in the CFP. And the first time a Big 12 team not named the Sooners is in the CFP, and only 14.
First time 2 Big 10 teams have made the CFP, Rabbi? First time?
I think so. I'd have to go back, but yes, but yeah. That's I think only 3 have made it overall. I think the only other Big 10 team to actually ever make it is Michigan State, which again shows you how the CFP is a crapshoot and is not really a crapshoot, and it's like 15 games overall. All right, Anthony, committee, did they make the right decision?
Yes, without question. You look at the 4 teams. Georgia was dominant all season as the defending national champions. I mean, they basically just dominated the SEC East, correct? That's
yes, they dominated the SEC East. Their only real struggle was ironic. It was against Missouri, ironically enough, but every other game, especially the Tennessee game, which was really obviously the Oregon game in the opener, but the Tennessee game was the real eye opener that this is possibly as good of a defense as last year's was.
Yeah, I mean, it was just good. We saw what he did to LSU in the SEC championship game a week ago. I mean, they were without question the number 1 team in the country, and Michigan, Ohio State. I mean, up until they played each other, they won their games convincingly fashion, particularly Ohio State with that really potent offense. Michigan, they did it the opposite. They did it with defense. They did it with a power running game. They did it with timely big plays and both teams almost got caught looking ahead to one another, almost getting upset before the game. But you knew that the loser of that game was pretty much going to be on the outside looking in, unless a couple of days broke their way, and obviously USC losing opened up that 4 spot, and that allowed Ohio State to really get back as the number 4. I felt like there were the 2 or 3 teams respectively. In TCU, look, you can't punish them for literally being a couple of inches away from winning the conference championship game, and that's pretty much what it came down to. They were the best team, the 4th best team. The committee got it right, and it was. And look, this is the thing. I just want to jump out of my angle for a second to say how good it was to see Nick Saban kind of groveling with the same argument he shot down for years, playing hypotheticals as far as look, it's his team. I get it. He had to speak up for it, but it was like, wow, how fun is to see this guy groveling to get his team in when he's on the other end of it. It's a complete.
What's funny is
all the time. So it felt great to see that, but the committee definitely look. We have the 4 best teams. in college football playing for a national championship, and that's all we asked for. The committee didn't go for big ratings and nothing like that or household names. They stuck with the criteria. They looked at the conference championships. They looked at the big picture overall. Which I'm talking about Michigan, Ohio State. Both teams were very good, dominant. And TCU, they handled their business up until literally the Big 12 championship game when they were literally a couple of inches away from winning. So the committee, they did their job this year. And in a couple of years, we don't have to worry about this anymore. But for now, yes, they got it right.
Yeah, and one thing I want to say about Nick Saban groveling, it's funny because they actually did win the national title without getting to the SEC championship game in 2018. That was a one-loss team that had lost to Auburn. This is a 1-2 loss team. And again, I'll talk about them in a second, but it's very hard to lose 2 games and make it to the CFP playoff in this format, Jay. Jay, you pretty much think they got it right too, right?
Yeah, I do. Look, number 3 TCU was rightly not penalized for the overtime loss to K-State in the Big 12 title game. Wildcats are a top 10 team, played the Horned Frogs tough in the regular season, losing by just 10. TCU beat 6 top 25 teams this season in a variety of ways. And honestly, guys, the commitment's nitpicking over how TCU won those games was frankly annoying. It's long past time college football did away with the whole style points thing. As Herm Edwards famously said, you play to win the game. How you get the W should not matter. And in fact, as I said to you earlier this week, TCU deserves the respect given to a Cy Young caliber pitcher who figures out how to win on a day where he knows he doesn't have his best stuff. I am glad that the rest of the country will get to see TCU quarterback Max Duggan on the national stage. He's one of the gutsiest players in all of college football, and there were games this year where he basically willed the Horned Frogs to victory. Their matchup with Michigan should be a slugfest. Number 4, Ohio State was the correct next team up once USC fell out after their loss to Utah in the Pac-12 title game. And yes, I threw up in a little bit in my mouth, as a Michigan fan saying that. You guys talked about Saban. Here's my take. Sorry, Nick, but this year the Tide just doesn't have the resume. You were more unremarkable than you were dominant, and you lacked a win that made anyone sit up and take notice. Granted, the Buckeyes looked overmatched against my guys from up north for the second year in a row, but otherwise, Ohio State had been a top 4 team all season, as Anthony said. Yes, they got all they could handle from the likes of Notre Dame, Penn State, Maryland, and believe it or not, Northwestern. But C.J. Stroud put up another Heisman-worthy campaign and carried a Buckeye offense that had a myriad of injuries at running back and had number 1 wide receiver Jackson Smith and Jigba for only 3 games. The Buckeyes are probably the team that Georgia didn't really want to see in the CFP semis, but the game will be in Atlanta, and if the Dogs can't win a home state playoff game, then they don't deserve to repeat as national champions anyway. Once number 2 Michigan beat Ohio State convincingly for the second year in a row, the Wolverines were pretty much a lead pipe lock to make the CFP no matter what happened in the Big Ten title game. Though an upset loss to Purdue, which thankfully did not happen, would have put their number 2 seeding in some doubt. Last year's CFP entrant may have had more stars, especially on defense, but this year's team has more depth up and down the roster on both sides of the ball, as injuries to the likes of running backs Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, tight end Luke Schoonmaker, and edge rusher Mike Morris didn't slow them down one bit on their march to 13-0. But all but Corum are healthy, and with an offensive line that may be better than last year's Joe Moore winners, a top 5 scoring defense, and the reemergence of the full dual threatness of quarterback J.J. McCarthy, the best second half team in the nation will be a tough out, though TCU is a team that can match the Wolverines in the toughest department. It's funny, though, how in all of the hullabaloo leading up to the final CFP reveal, the one team no one was really talking about was number 1 Georgia. All the talk was about TCU, USC, Ohio State, Alabama, and a myriad of others. Rabbi, you and I spoke after the Final Four was revealed, and after UGA was officially locked in as the number 1 seed, I said to you that after losing 15 players to the NFL draft after last year's title, anyone outside of Athens who said they'd be 13-0 and right back here with a chance to repeat was full of it. If things go chalk and we get a Bulldogs Wolverines rematch, I think it could be a college football championship game for the ages if they can get past the Buckeyes. Guys, folks can and will and have and probably will continue to do so, argue about whether the committee got it right, as they have almost every year. But as far as this year goes, I think the Athletics' David Ubben said it best. And here's the quote: results have to matter. Otherwise, what are we doing? Alabama's body of work in 2022 meant it needed to wait until next season to compete in the playoffs for the 8th time. TCU deserved inclusion. Alabama deserved to be excluded for just the 2nd time in playoff history. The committee recognized this. Its charge is to select the 4 best teams, but Sunday it chose the 4 most deserving, and the sport is better off for it. I agree 1,000%.
I agree on your argument, but I like how you're saying how the CFP should get rid of style points.
Yeah.
And then immediately mention how unremarkable Alabama's wins were this year immediately afterward, and noticing that they only.
I didn't say, look,
you said that
unremarkable is not
the way you said that.
Yeah, but that's not the same as saying that they didn't have a standout win. That's not the same thing. That's not the same thing.
To be fair, though, they did, but it is about what was in the L column, and you do have to mention they did win at Penn State, even though Penn State's not remarkable in my book, and they did win against Notre Dame, who was a decent team out there. One thing that I'm excited for when the CFP goes to 12 teams that I didn't really get enough attention is the conference championships are going to mean a hell of a lot more, because you don't win your conference championship, you're at large. And an at large means you're going to have to win 4 games no matter what to be the champion. You will be automatically a 5 seed or lower. If the committee got exactly what they wanted, the top 4 seed, if the committee went the way it was supposed to go, the 4 seeds would have been as follows. Ohio State, Georgia 1, Michigan 2, Clemson 3. Yes, Clemson 3, because they were the 3rd highest conference winner, and Utah 4. Kansas State would have also been in the mix, but they dropped below Utah in the final rankings. So that's something I am looking very forward to seeing. Conference championships really mattering, because when USC lost on Friday, I think a lot of people thought that the 4 teams were locked in, and it turned out that the 4 teams were locked in. Sorry, I didn't mean to mention it one more time, but I had to mention it for posterity purposes. Sorry, Jay. But good luck against Tulane in the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah.
I will say this, though. I do think that this was a very weird year. I do think Georgia is a very dominant team. I want to see what we see in the college football playoff, because this might be the time. That layoff might mean a lot, because Georgia has played a lot of good opponents, has played in a very tough conference, but they haven't really had a big time matchup until the Ohio State game comes. And remember, by the way, they lost to Alabama in a national championship game in that stadium. They have not had good memories in that stadium. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens when Georgia has to play a bowl game in that stadium again. But altogether, I think obviously, I think, even though I did semi-vouch for Alabama at points during this, I think they got it right. I do think Ohio State can go either way in that national summit final. It'll be very interesting. All right. Want to touch on a bunch of the soccer topics before we get off of the air. So let's do this quickly. 1 week ago, about this time, you saw the U.S. end the World Cup in the wimpiest of whimpers, a 3-1 loss to the Netherlands. Another round of 16 appearance, 2010, 2014, 2022. It's ended in the round of 16. What did you see from the U.S. guys in this World Cup? I'll start with you, Anthony. What did you see from the U.S. in this World Cup, positive or negative?
Well, the positives is definitely this World Cup was really about building a foundation for 2026. You think about the men's program missing the World Cup entirely in 2018 and kind of having to rebuild from the ashes of that disaster to get to this World Cup, the 2nd youngest team in the field, and the fact that they were able, and they were one of the toughest groups too. You think about, they had the 3 Lions, they had Iran, and they had Wales in a group, and the fact that they went through group play without yielding a goal in free play was pretty impressive. It tells you how good that defense, that back line defensively, led by Tyler Adams, how good they really were up until the Netherlands game, and obviously the negatives is the inexperience on this team. I mean, you know, the they got a crash course, and basically what happens when you make a mistake against the better quality clubs in the world. The Netherlands just made them pay. Like they fell asleep numerous occasions defensively on the back end, and the Netherlands made them pay for it each and every time. That's something that they're gonna have to. That's a lesson learned. They're gonna have to take moving forward. But there was a couple of things too. Particularly Gio Reyna not being used nearly as much, and on a team that really struggled with goal scoring. I mean, they didn't have a particular striker on that team.
They didn't have a number 9 going into this World Cup. That's something that they still need to kind of develop. Christian Pulisic is not a number 9. He's a midfielder, and he's a guy that makes the whole engine run. And he did that until he kind of got injured in that goal. But yeah, they need a number 9.
Yeah, but Pulisic's more, to me, he's more of like a setup guy, a guy who can play.
He can do everything, but he can't be primarily that guy. He can't be your 40-point-a-game NBA type guy, if that makes the most sense as a.
No, it definitely makes the most sense. And they obviously, the men's team, it's gonna be a work in progress. One guy you're talking about, Ricardo Pepi, maybe being the number 9 in 2026, but they got 4 years. They got a lot of things leading up to the World Cup and some of the tournaments they played very well. So it's definitely a building block for 4 years from now. But not all is lost for Team USA, because we're about 8 months away from the women taking the grand stage, and they're actually the favorites. They're actually probably the favorites going into the World Cup. So it just tells you how far behind the men's soccer program is, and how dominant, despite all the financial situations going on with the women's side, and how good they've been able to develop players and develop their program. So the men really do have a lot of catching up to do.
We'll talk more about that on future episodes. I think that's a topic I'd love to get into. Jay, final thoughts on the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, my expectations for Team USA were met. I thought this very young team could make it out of group play, and they did. It didn't go the way I expected. I thought they would lose to England, beat Iran, and the match against Wales would go either way, so a draw wasn't a surprise. Though they did leave chances on the table that I like to think that they will get those chances home in 2026 when the World Cup is at home. Well, some of it anyway. The 3-1 loss to the Netherlands in knockout round was a tough way to go out, but they showed they could play good soccer. They proved that they were capable of fighting through some difficult moments, and they had to get a result. And most importantly, they had real belief that they could play with anyone on the sport's biggest stage. Tyler Adams, the U.S.'s 23-year-old captain, said he believed the team delivered 4 performances that should really give people something in this country to be excited about. Here's his quote. "We've shown we can hang with some of the best teams in the world. We've made progress, and we will keep pushing. We're not there yet, but we're close. The more time we have together, the more growth there will be, but we need to mature for matches like this," meaning the Netherlands game. It comes down to the moments, and the more experienced side got the better of us today. And he's right. There were plenty of positives to take away from this 2022 World Cup. You can start with the 3 guys in the midfield. McKennie, Musa, and Adams. They started all 4 games for the U.S. They were dominant in the majority of the first 3 matchups, most notably against an England team whose midfield was rated a lot higher. You guys mentioned Pulisic. He's the U.S.'s best player. He had a strong tournament, setting up the goal against Wales, showing well against England, scoring what turned out to be the winner against Iran before that pelvic injury took him out of the game. He had a chance to be the hero again, less than 3 minutes into the game against the Dutch, but wasn't able to finish. Had the assist on Wright's goal, and overall was the best attacking player for the U.S. in Qatar. In total, he played a part in every goal the U.S. scored in this World Cup, and it's what the U.S. would have hoped to see from their biggest star on this stage. Anthony, I do agree with you and the Rabbi that he should not be in the position to be the guy where all of the goal scoring is on him. He is, to use the baseball metaphor, you don't want him being your cleanup hitter. You want him batting third in the lineup, in terms of he'll get the guys in front of him home, but he'll also get on base to set up the cleanup hitter behind him. You want him in that role where he's the ancillary goal scorer but the primary facilitator. as you guys mentioned, yeah, there were some negatives, but at the end of the day, this World Cup was always going to be about progress and growth for, again, the second youngest team in the tournament. The stated goal by manager Greg Berhalter and the players themselves was for this tournament, it was about changing the way the world sees American soccer, though the case could be made that the more important goal was changing the way the U.S. thinks about the men's team solely because of the way they think about the women's team and the disparity between them, the two in performances. In those both scenarios, I think the men's national team accomplished both, and I think it gives them a really good pushing off point for 2026.
The disparity is also more on the way that the U.S. Soccer Federation treats both of the teams, and that's why our perspective is kind of more biased towards the men, because the U.S. Soccer Federation doesn't recognize the women enough to the point where they should be recognized more. But again, different show, not for here. I do think the U.S. did a very good job in Qatar. I do think there were, like I said, defense was great, but you play a world-class team like the Netherlands and you make little mistakes like Tyler Adams made at the end of the first half. He had probably who's the best player on the field the whole entire time of group play. So, but they'll make you pay. I think the one crazy thing is whenever there's just 1 minute of stoppage time left in any half, it's the scariest moment in anything in soccer. Forget the 10 minutes. The 1 minute, everybody's like, oh, thank God. And then you give up a goal immediately afterwards. But otherwise, I think the U.S., there's still a division and you still need any World Cup. If you're not one of the top 10 or 12 teams in the country, you need stuff to break your way. And the Netherlands was not the opponent for them. You saw yesterday versus Argentina, they can score goals in a fast break second. And I think that's exactly what happened. And the U.S. is not built, obviously, to be a 3 or 4 goal team, especially in this team. They're going to need, again, they need a striker. They need a guy who's basically the one last baseball comparison, Kyle Schwarber of the U.S. men's soccer team. Get goals and get diggers, get goals, get them immediately. All right. There's a bunch of more things I want to touch really quickly, but I want to touch about a couple of the things I've seen. I don't even need to include group play right now because the crap I've seen over the last few days of the World
Well, we just Swanton
Morocco
just a half hour ago.
Yeah, Morocco, who basically saved everything that Spain could have thrown at them in the round of 16, just won again in a quarterfinal, and now Morocco is the first ever African nation to make the Final Four of the World Cup. Croatia beating Brazil yesterday after doing the rare equalizer in extra time and then going on to making it to their second consecutive quarterfinals. Argentina and what they did yesterday after giving up a 2-goal lead and keeping Lionel Messi's career intact as in the national stage. Ronaldo flaming out on the stage, losing his starting spot in the Switzerland game and having his replacement score the first hat trick in about 30 years in the World Cup. But they just flamed out today, so we saw 1-star lose. England and France are playing now, but it's been a very good mix of favorites like the teams doing what they need to do, especially on the English, especially in the European side. You're going to see England or France back there again. You're going to Argentina's looking very strongly like they are going to look to give Messi his first World Cup. They're doing what they need to do, even going back to Argentina, Saudi Arabia. This has been an insane World Cup. Quickly, guys, you have a quick moment for me, and then I will. I want to mention one more thing about the World Cup before we move on to our close.
In terms of the World Cup, Rabbi,
yeah,
I think you pretty much covered it. You there's been so many years where the tournament has gone almost 100% chalk. There haven't been, in a lot of ways, I look at the World Cup kind of through a similar lens, the way I look at the men's
basketball tournament,
where, we love the early round upsets. We love to see a team make a Cinderella run, but we're not surprised that when you get to the final weekend, it's you got 4 blue bloods playing for the national title. and in certain ways, we've seen this tournament have maybe a few more upstarts making some waves than we have in the past. But at the end of the day, you're seeing the teams that, to a certain extent you expect, you expect, even though they haven't really done it in the past, you almost come into every tournament expecting Argentina to get this far because of Messi. You expect England because of Kane to make a deep run. I'm surprised that the French are on the cusp of potentially repeating because of the issues they've had, but that would be a great story if they can come through. And, England playing France is always fun. It's not normal for a team like Morocco to make this type of a run, but, when something like that happens, it adds some nice unexpected color to the tournament. And I think, and we've gotten a nice mix of certain teams doing what we expected them to do, and other teams making us go, whoa, cool. And, that's kind of,
Anthony,
at the end of the day, that's what you want.
Anthony, any quick thoughts?
Yeah, also you think about Croatia knocking off Brazil at penalty kicks, and think about Japan winning their group unexpectedly. So we've had a good mix of, okay, we expect this team to be dominant, and we see these, Japan and Croatia kind of step up and kind of like, okay, where did this come from? I mean, there's a lot of tournament brackets out there that got busted pretty much through group play. When you think about some of the teams like Germany for the second straight World Cup flaming out in group play.
Yeah.
It's like there was so many topsy-turvy games that happened. Just getting to the round of 16, and obviously, and we talked about the U.S. unexpectedly playing England very tough to get a draw out of that. But we've seen England kind of step it up and turn it on. Since then. So maybe that was the wake-up call the three Lions definitely needed.
We'll see what happens going forward.
We'll definitely see them. They play France this afternoon.
Yeah. Before we move on to our close, I do want to mention a very tragic thing unfortunately happened in Qatar last night.
Yeah.
If you don't know who Grant Wall is, he is currently was one of the well-known soccer writers of the world. Only 48 years old, dying very suddenly in Qatar. We don't know what the cause was. It seems like it was a heart attack, according to a bunch of people. We won't get into that right now. A man who is covering his 8th World Cup. He's worked on a lot of podcasts. I was listening to one of them during the World Cup. He
wrote soccer for Sports Illustrated for years.
Wrote for soccer, yes. He wrote soccer for Sports Illustrated until about 2010, I think. He was also he wrote the story, the famous Chosen One cover story about LeBron James in 2002. Also a man who was very active. Actually got kicked out of a Qatari soccer stadium early in the tournament because he was wearing a gay rights shirt, had a loving life, but was very, very, very for the equal rights of everyone, especially with what's going on in Qatar. So very tough loss, a very stunning loss. Only 48 years old, and shocking, just completely shocking. All right. Before we go, we also want to mention the fact that yesterday or Thursday, Brittany Griner was freed from Russia in a prisoner swap. Amazing to finally see this saga come to an end. And internet, it doesn't work where Joe Biden is a general manager. He can't necessarily say, I want a Marine in exchange. So as much as I had said that before, cut that shit out.
Yeah.
Cut that shit out.
And cutting that shit out, Rabbi, starts with Boomer Esiason. Boomer, come on, knock it off.
Again, a lot of misinformation on that, but a great story. And again, it was either him or nothing, because yes, and Anthony, they treated him exactly as a spy. We don't know if he was a spy or not, but Russia was basically like, it's spy for spy. So it wasn't going to happen, but it's great to see Brittany Griner. She's back in the U.S. as of, I think, yesterday, with her wife. We'll probably hear more about, she's probably going to go. She's got a lot of stuff to do to kind of acclimate herself back into American society after a almost 10-month ordeal in Russia. It's great to see her home, and it's great to see her becoming a part of the WNBA landscape again, coming in the 2023 season. All right.
Yeah, I want to say this. The first time she takes two things. The first time she takes the court, she's going to get the biggest applause you could possibly think of. Number one. And number two, the WNBA got to do more because we can't have a situation like this again. When players are having to go across seas to earn extra money and something like this happen, the WNBA is going to step it up. Whereas, as far as giving the players a bigger cut of pay, whatever that may be, but something's definitely gotta be done to prevent something like this ever happening again.
A lot needs to be talked about, but there's a lot of discussions and talking about it. We will have a lot more to say over the next coming weeks. Speaking of, we gotta stop talking. For Jay Kaplan, Anthony Strait,
the next time we will talk will be when, Rabbi? When's the next?
Can I do my closing, please? For Jay Kaplan, Anthony Strait, and myself, Steve Rabinowitz, this has been On the Sports Lines. Next show you will see us will be our year-end award show. That will be the last week of December. We'll give you a specific date when we get to it, so look out for that. We will have it up for you live again last week of December. Look out for that. And you can see it live at facebook.com/onthesportslines, where you can check out our page, youtube.com/onthesportslines on demand,
and our Twitter handle is at ONTH Sportslines, where you will be given a heads up as to the actual show date for our year-end award show. And you can also go there to see other interesting items in the world of sports that we think are worth your time to check out.
Never put voice text on your text messages. I'm just letting you know that right now. You just gave me like a whole like paragraph in like 1 second. All right. We will see you in a couple of weeks to officially close the book on 2022. From everybody on the Sports Lines, good day.
Enjoy your weekend, folks.
That's for everyone.